A cruise ship of 114,000 tons, meant to be unsinkable, rests on its side off a Tuscan island. 32 people are dead, lost just meters from safety. Official reports blamed a reckless captain, but the truth runs deeper. This disaster was engineered by a culture that treated dangerous stunts as tradition. How did a routine showmanship maneuver become criminal negligence? And why did the company allow it to happen again and again? The answers start with a single order that every insider saw coming. Costa Concordia promoted itself as a company that brought spectacle to the Mediterranean. For years, cruise ships under its flag edged close to the shorelines of islands like Giglio, Procida, and Ischia, sounding horns and drawing crowds. The maneuver known as the Encino was never written into official policy, but it became an open secret among captains and crew. Automatic identification system records show that the Costa Concordia and its sister ships performed close passes near Giglio multiple times before 2012. On some occasions, the course brought ships within a few hundred meters of rocks clearly marked on navigation charts. Executives in Genoa insisted these passes were the captain's decision, but public statements and internal communications told a different story. In August 2010, the company's own blog celebrated a close pass at Procida as a highlight of the cruise. In 2011, Costa Serena performed a similar salute off Ischia, with the event promoted as a festive tradition. CEO Pierluigi Foschi later admitted to Parliament that sail-by salutes were used to enrich the cruise product and boost publicity. Giglio's residents described the sight of massive ships passing close as a regular event, not a surprise. Despite repeated close approaches, Costa Concordia never issued a formal ban on the Encino before the disaster. No safety audits flagged the practice, and no captain was disciplined for deviating from the planned route. The absence of prohibition sent a clear message: as long as nothing went wrong, spectacle outweighed risk. The culture that took shape was one where dangerous stunts were tolerated, even celebrated, so long as they brought attention and filled cabins. At 9:45 p.m., the Costa Concordia's hull tore open against the Ley Skull rocks, carving a 53-meter gash along the port side, longer than an Olympic swimming pool. 5 watertight compartments flooded within minutes, more than double what the ship was built to withstand. The design allowed the ship to survive 2 adjacent compartments being breached, but this was catastrophic overreach. Water surged through the engine rooms, disabling propulsion and cutting all main power. Emergency generators flickered, then failed after less than a minute. The ship began to list hard to starboard as the lower decks filled, first the engine spaces, then crew cabins, then passenger corridors. With the loss of power, electronic navigation and internal communication systems went dead. Alarms sounded briefly, then silence. In the darkness below, pumps were overwhelmed almost instantly. The flooding was so rapid that even closing the watertight doors could not save the ship's stability. Survivability standards written into international law had no answer for this scale of damage. The Concordia, a floating city, was now a dead weight, adrift, powerless, and flooding beyond control. Every minute of delay meant more water, fewer escape routes, and a ship tipping further onto its side. The margin for survival, measured in steel and time, had been wiped away in seconds. The ship's hull was breached at 9:45 p.m. Within minutes, water poured through 5 compartments, killing the lights and tipping the decks. On the bridge, Captain Scatino and his officers knew the reality. The Costa Concordia was flooding faster than any pump could manage, with the list growing by the second. Yet, as the engines died and alarms faded, the official word to passengers was simple: stay calm, remain in your cabins, it is just an electrical blackout. For more than an hour, that lie echoed through the ship's corridors. Announcements reassured 4,229 people that technicians were fixing a technical problem. In reality, water was rising through lower decks, swallowing escape routes and sealing off entire sections. Crew members, following orders, repeated the blackout story to nervous guests, while the bridge ignored mounting evidence of disaster. The result was a dangerous silence that cost vital time. At 10:06 p.m., the first call to the Italian Coast Guard described only a blackout, not a collision. Schettino's voice stayed measured, insisting everything was under control. No mayday was issued. By the time the truth finally broke through and the abandoned ship order sounded at 10:58 p.m., the ship was listing so hard that half the lifeboats were now unusable. 73 minutes of silence and deception had traded precious time for confusion, sealing the fate of those trapped below. On board the Costa Concordia, the safety drill had been reduced to a video played in a crowded lounge. Passengers watched animated instructions for donning life jackets and following illuminated exit signs, but few had ever walked to their assigned muster stations. Crew members came from more than 30 countries, speaking dozens of languages, including Filipino, Romanian, Indonesian, Italian, and Portuguese, often with only basic English in common. When the ship began to list, confusion spread faster than the water below. Some crew members struggled to understand announcements as alarms sounded in the darkness. Others, unfamiliar with the ship's layout, gave directions that led passengers to decks already flooding or to muster points that no longer existed. International maritime law, under SOLAS, required a physical muster drill within 24 hours of departure, but the Concordia's crew had relied on the minimum: a video, a checklist, and signatures. The reality of an evacuation, with decks tilting and corridors vanishing underwater, was never rehearsed. Passengers reported seeing crew members as lost as they were, huddled in stairwells or searching for emergency equipment. Elderly guests, families with children, and disabled passengers waited for instructions that never came. The evacuation, which should have lasted half an hour, stretched into the early morning. In the absence of practiced leadership, panic filled the void, and survival became a matter of luck and instinct. Captain Francesco Schettino left the Costa Concordia while hundreds of passengers and crew remained trapped on board. By the time he reached shore, confusion and fear still gripped the decks. The Italian Coast Guard tried to reach him by radio, demanding a report. Instead, they discovered their captain was no longer on his ship. At 11:42 p.m., Coast Guard Commander Gregorio De Falco's voice cut through the static, sharp, furious, and unforgettable. He ordered Schettino back. "Vada a bordo, cazzo!" Schettino hesitated, making excuses about the darkness and the tilt of the ship. De Falco refused to accept them. Maritime law is clear. The captain is the last to leave, not the first. On that freezing night, the Concordia was still full of people, elderly guests, families, and crew, waiting for help that would never come from their master. The radio exchange became a symbol of abandonment, echoing the reality that leadership had vanished when it was needed most. Costa Crociere paid the legal maximum for the deaths of 32 people, a €1 million fine, less than the price of a single luxury suite on a new ship. No executive faced trial. The company accepted an administrative penalty and moved on, its executives shielded by statutes that treat corporate negligence as a cost of doing business. Captain Francesco Schettino became the sole face of criminal responsibility. In 2015, an Italian court sentenced him to 16 years in prison for manslaughter, causing a shipwreck and abandoning passengers. The officers who pleaded out received suspended sentences or fines. The company's insurance covered civil settlements with survivors and families, but no board member or shore manager was ever charged for their role in tolerating the inchino or failing to enforce safety drills. Meanwhile, the wreck of the Costa Concordia remained beached off Giglio for more than 2 years, a rusting monument to failure. Salvage operations cost €1.5 billion, the most expensive maritime recovery in history, paid by insurers and ultimately by future passengers. The price of systemic negligence was measured in lives, euros, and the silent weight of a ship that should never have been lost. A €1 million fine, no executive prosecutions, and new rules written in hindsight. Cruise ships still carry thousands each night. Safety isn't a tradition until it's enforced. Every unchecked shortcut leaves risk drifting just beneath the surface. The next disaster waits for silence to become routine. What would you change?